Hey everyone, this is the Denim podcast, and I am your host once again, Tasha. This week has been an interesting week. It has been a full week, but I'm blessed to have the fullness of the week, and I pray that you all are blessed too. So let's start our week off with a little bit of the word. All right, let's get into it. This is episode 6, and episode 6 is called Meeting in the Midst. I know that for me, I've discovered walking this narrow path sometimes can be very overwhelming. It can be challenging at times, right? And how many times have you been in a season of trials or a wilderness per se, and you've looked for God or you've wanted to trace Him, see glimpses of Him? It's scary to be in the midst. It's scary to be in the midst of some place where you know it's a season that you're going through, right? Because the fact is that every problem has an expiration date. But what you're in feels like there's no way out, right? It can be scary being in that kind of place. Although it's scary, it's a very loving place to be in. It's all about perspective, right? How are you viewing your in the midst? So while life may indeed life, as we all know, God definitely God's, right? So life could life all at once, but God be God in, right? Okay. So in the midst is where you learn who God is for yourself. In the midst is where you find out who you truly are and who God created you to be. In the midst is where you tap in to that power that lives on the inside of you. In the midst is where you become. God is the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort. The Bible tells us so, right? So He is El Roy, the God that sees. He is Jehovah Jireh, the God that provides. I can run through the plethora of inexhaustible characteristics and attributes of the God who we serve. But what matters is, who is He to you when you are in the midst. For me, God has shown me time and time again who He is. In many different seasons of my life when I felt like I was in the midst of it, right? He's shown me exactly who He was. And I've come to find out and know and trust for myself that God is willing to meet you wherever you are in the midst. He's shown it to me time and time again, and I'm a living witness of that fact. In Psalms 139, 7 and 12, it says, "Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light becomes night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you." This is David. David is telling us that God is there, anywhere, anytime, and always. He is there, right? He will meet you because you belong to Him and because He belongs to you. In the middle, in the midst, God will meet you there. One of my most memorable meeting in the midst moments was when I was in emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual rehab. I wasn't physically in a rehab facility, but all of those different parts of me needed rehabilitation. I had just come out of a very abusive marriage, and one, honestly, that I wasn't ready to leave. It's not like I wanted to stay in the abuse. I wanted God to fix it. I wanted God to restore it. But He never did, because that's not what He wanted for me. That's not what His plans were for me. So I had to deal with that fact. I had to deal with the fact that my life was not what I envisioned it to be. Because no one actually says yes on that altar to then later on get divorced, you know? So it put me in a very vulnerable but foreign place. And I had to navigate that, right? So I wasn't ready to give it up. I wasn't ready to let it go. But God said that this is what I needed to do. I went through some of the darkest times in my life during that wilderness season because I had to figure out who I was outside of this thing I had made an idol. It's honestly a place that I never thought I'd see my way out of. And in a lot of ways, I was right. I couldn't get myself out of it. God had to see me through that season. So one night, I was in I was in torment, right? The devil was just playing with my mind. I couldn't sleep. It was about 3 a.m. I had to go to work the next morning. My mind was racing with a bunch of negative, toxic thoughts. Just, it wasn't a good space. And I honestly felt as if I was being tormented. The devil was pulling a double shift that night. And I found myself in a place of just utter sorrow and despair, hopelessness. And the only thing I knew to do was to cry out to God. So I did. I cried out to him because I was downtrodden. I was grieving where I thought my life should be versus where it actually was. I was just feeling lost, feeling alone. It was just a horrible place to be in, but it was the perfect place for God to meet me. So I cried out to him, snot, drooling, all of it was there. But I gave him the best of me and the worst of me all at once. And I told him every single thing that was on my mind, even the things that church people tell you you shouldn't tell God. I gave it all to him. The good, the bad, the ugly, the indifferent, I gave it all to him. I told him everything that was going on in my mind, everything that I was feeling. And I was honestly speaking from a very limited perspective of what my life should be. But that's where I was in that moment. Right? I cast all of my cares on him, all of them. I didn't sugarcoat. I didn't disrespect him as Lord, but I gave him the raw, unadulterated me. And at the end of myself, he stepped in the bedroom with me. He stepped into my room and I cried to him and asked him to just hold me. Hold me, Lord. And he did. I felt him wrap his arms around me and squeeze me so tight. It was so much comfort. It was so comforting. And I can feel his peace just wash over me and silence the noise in my mind. I knew that God was with me in that moment. I knew it. I knew he was in the room with me in that moment. I knew that he saw fit to meet me in the midst of whatever it was that I was going through in that moment. And that's the kind of God that we serve. He will meet you. It can be in the midst of your storm, in the midst of your triumph. It can be in the midst of a dreadful moment. He will meet you there. And it was that night that for myself, not through others' testimonies, not through stories, and not through the experiences of other people, but for myself, I was convinced that God will step down from that throne on high and meet me in the midst. There's nothing too hard, nothing too big, nothing too unpleasant, nothing too nasty, nothing too dreadful, nothing. that he can't step into. Nothing. Nothing at all. And it was at that moment that I felt and understood the overwhelming love of the Father, of my Father, because it became personal to me in the midst. So God tells us in both the Old and the New Testament that he will never leave us nor forsake us. God is relational, right? This is an everlasting promise that transcends generation. God is relational, and he goes beyond the borders of a lineage, of a generation, of time. This is why he introduces himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to show you that he transcends the limitations of generations. So let's talk a little bit about him meeting us in the midst. In Daniel 3, it tells us about the 3 Hebrew boys and the blazing furnace. Now, this is such a popular Bible story that I think we miss the gems because we know it so well. This is familiar, but what always stuck out to me in this story was that the 3 Hebrew boys, honestly, they were breaking the law. They were breaking the law. They were being disruptors, and they paid the price for their disruption. And I'm going to pause here and say this. Be the disruptor that God called you to be. Disrupt the atmosphere of gossip at your workplace. Disrupt the negative atmosphere in your home. Disrupt the lineage of mediocrity in your bloodline. Be the disruptor who Jesus was. God didn't call you to go with the flow. So be the disruptor that he called you to be. He didn't call you to go with the flow of things. He called you to disrupt that flow and put that into alignment with the flow that he has, with his flow. So go out there and do some disrupting. All right? Amen? Amen. All right. So the 3 Hebrew boys refused to worship the golden idol made by King Nebuchadnezzar and was thrown in a blazing furnace, which was 7 times hotter than it usually was. That's how mad King Nebuchadnezzar was. He was big mad, but he'd be all right though, right? But the God we serve, the meeting in the midst God we serve, right? Jump right in there with them. He didn't take them out. He simply met them in the midst. He could have done whatever it was that he wanted to do. But in that moment, God chose to be the 4th man in the fire. So sometimes we're asking God to take us out, remove us from it, when all we really need to do is ask him to meet us in the midst of it. The comfort of God will calm whatever it is you are in, right there in the middle of the chaos. That's why it's called the peace that surpasses all understanding. Because in the middle of the chaos, you are supposed to feel chaotic, discombobulated, all of the things. But when you ask God to meet you in the midst of it, he will calm the storm. So there is glory in the midst. There is triumph in the midst. There is peace in the midst. There is joy in the midst. There is relationship in the midst. There is victory in the midst. There is freedom in the midst. And there is God in the midst. Matthew 18 and 20 tells us that when 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, God is in the midst. So get in the room with your community and ask him to meet you there, and he will come. His word says so. All right. So remember, when life starts lifing, right, as it always does, God is the creator of life. So there's absolutely nothing that life can throw at you that God can't handle. Nothing, right? Call on him and he'll meet you in the midst of whatever it is that you're going through. He'll even equip you with the comfort to comfort others with the same comfort that he himself gave you. That's the kind of God we serve. So I say all of this to say, you're not alone. It doesn't matter what you have classified it as. It doesn't matter what you think it is. God can meet you in the middle of it. Because as the word said, if I go to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. He's there. And he's willing to meet you wherever it is you need him to meet you. But God is not going to just show up. Call on him. He wants you to call on him. So in the middle of whatever it is that you're in right now, in the middle of the storm, in the middle of the darkness, in the middle of whatever, call on him and he'll meet you in the midst. I have seen God show up in the most unfavorable circumstances that honestly the devil will try to shame me in thinking that God can't come. God won't show. But God is God, and he is not a man that he should lie. So call on him. Call on him, and he'll meet you in the midst. All right? I love you, and I pray that this ministers to some part of your soul, because we tend to keep things harbored inside when we have a God who's just waiting to meet us where we are. So let him meet you where you are. Talk to him. All right? This is episode 6, Meeting in the Midst. I love the God that we serve because he's willing to come down and meet us where we are. I pray that this strengthens your belief and your trust and your faith in him. And I pray that when you are going through and when you are in the middle of it, you remember that all you got to do is call on him. All right? I love you. Thank you for tuning in. I thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe, and comment. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know what questions you have. I'm open to all of it. All right. Once again, this is your host, Tasha, and this is the Lace and Denim podcast. See you next time.